Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. I am so delighted to have you this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, whenever you are watching this on YouTube. I am the Reverend Dr. Kadar Walker, and it is Sunday, March 13th of 2022. I welcome all of you on YouTube and all of you here in person. Delighted to have you here on this snowy, cold day and top of a time change. We are so glad that you've chosen to be with us this morning, whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are from, you are welcome here. Whatever reason got you to click on that link or get in your cold car this morning, whether you are a long-time member or a first-time visitor, you are welcome here. We are a community dedicated to welcoming the stranger and working for justice wherever the heavy weight of oppression has woven into the fabric of life. I, of course, do not produce this worship by myself. I have an extraordinary team of talented people working with me. Liturgist Ward Kelsey will be joining us. And of course, you've already met the amazing Ellen Goshen, Director of Instrumental Music, and our Story for All today is offered by Erica Shadowsong, with music being sung by the gorgeous voice of Giselle Rodriguez. Delighted to have you. Technical wizard support, Paul Cunningham and Will Snavely, and all of you, on behalf of everybody, thank you for being here to make sure that we know we're appreciated. If this is your very first time with us, please, we would like to be in touch with you. If you have not already done so, please check out our website. You can just Google First Unitarian Church of Pittsburgh. Down at the bottom of the website, you will find a newsletter sign-up form, and you can find out more information about us. And you can sign up to receive emails from us or attend one of our introductory classes. And if you would like to join us for social hour on Zoom directly following the service, just send an email to First Unitarian Pittsburgh, all one word, firstunitarianpittsburgh@gmail.com, and you'll get an automated response with a Zoom link. I have one announcement. I would like you to check your emails for all of our community members and friends. We have some cottage meetings that are going on, hosted by VIM, a wonderful group of people, and the topic is our views on climate and environmental justice. This is a great way to talk to each other about some really important issues and finding out where our hearts and our interests are. I invite you now to take a deep breath and arrive in body and spirit for worship, however that word means to you. Let go of your need to complete a list of things to do, places you might need, tasks you might need. Just be here now. Picture yourself connected to people across time and space as we worship together in community. We turn now to our chalice lighting, the symbol of our faith. Each Sunday we light this chalice. And today I hope this flame kindles something within all of your minds and your hearts that reminds us of how we all have a kindled spirit within each of us, that we are connected by the flames of passion to seek justice, to create and dismantle connections with us as we dismantle injustice, as we dismantle all the barriers of inequity. This month, as we look at abundance and inequity, we ask ourselves what we can do to help create a better world for all.
Step by step, the longest march can This story comes to us from Celtic pagan myth and legend. It's told by Erica Hell Mead in her book, The Moon in the Well. How Bridget Got Lands for the Poor. Long, long ago in Ireland, a few wealthy landowners owned great tracts of fertile land, while the poor were forced up into the rocky hills to eke out a living from the sparse soil. Sound familiar? One year the crops went bad, and the poor could barely scrape together an onion or a carrot for their supper. Bridget went to one of the richest landholders and said, "The harvest is grim this year, and the peasants need your help." The landowner replied, Bridget, I'll think on it, but in truth, if the people would only work harder, they surely could fend for themselves." A few weeks passed, and the situation grew worse. Bridget went again to the landholder and said, "The peasants have no food. They've taken to the hills to eat shamrocks and grass. What will you do for them?" "Now, Bridget," said the landholder, "don't get pushy. I'm a busy man. Why is it you're here talking to me when you should be talking to the peasants about what they can do for themselves? I've no time for this. Now be gone with you." Another week passed, and the situation became very grave. Bridget went again to the landholders, and in a rage she cried, "You've done nothing to help, and now the children are starving. I demand that you give land to the poor." "Well, Bridget," said the landholder, "it couldn't be that bad. You don't look to be starved yourself, nor lacking for warm clothes. 'Tis a fine wool cloak you wear on your back. Let it not be said I'm a stingy man. Here's what we'll do. You go out to the plain, choose any spot, spread your white cloak on the ground, and the plot that it covers, whatever it covers, I'll donate to the poor." "Tax-free?" asked Bridget. "All right, tax-free," said the landowner, "but don't ask for anything more." So that day, Bridget and 3 of her sisters went out to the very center of the fertile plain. Each took a hold of the corner of the white cloak. Bridget said, "All right, girls, pull it taut." They did so, and then Bridget cried, "Now take a step backward." Each of them took a step backward, one to the north, one to the south, one to the east, and one to the west. And as they did, the cloak expanded. Then Bridget cried, "All right, keep walking." They did, and as they did so, the cloak continued to expand until it covered the whole expanse of the plain. That afternoon, as usual, the landholder went up to his tower to look out and survey his lands. At first glance, it looked as if a snow had fallen. Then he saw that the rocks above were bare. "The cloak," he whispered, falling to his knees, now seeing Providence at work in the matter. When he saw Bridget striding up that walkway, he leaned out of the window and cried, "Mercy, Bridget, I'll keep my word. The whole of the plain belongs to the poor, and I'll throw in 100 bags of oat seed that they might prosper by it." And Bridget said, "That's fine for tomorrow, but what will you do for today?" "For today," said the landholder, "why, a feast for today, a feast for all." "What sort of a feast?" asked Bridget. "Oh, why, a feast of stews and roast and compotes and mashes and stuffings and jellies and cakes," replied the landholder. "And bags to take home?" asked Bridget. "Oh, why, of course, bags to take home," assured the landholder. "Very well then," said Bridget. "I'll spread the word." "Aye, Bridget, I'm sure you will, and if I don't mind saying that if you spread the word as efficiently as you spread your cloak, not a soul will miss this feast."
So donations by check may be mailed to the church office. Electronic donations can be made online through the church website or by texting GIVE to 412-435-1050 and following the instructions. Those of you who are here today, and I'm glad to see you, I almost wasn't, will find that you can... On the way out, you can make a donation then.
This world is full of trouble and woe. This world is full of trouble and woe. All I see is trouble everywhere I go. I'm gonna sing trouble that I know. This world is full of sadness and tears. This world is full of sadness and tears. They fill us full of sadness, full of fears. But I'm gonna sing till my eyes are clear. I'm gonna dig deep down into my heart. Gonna dig deep down into my heart. Dig deep down, do my part. I'm gonna sing a brand new start. This world is full of promise and love. This world is full of promise and love. Promise of a new day, no dark clouds above. I'm gonna sing that world I'm dreaming of. This world is full of joy and mystery. 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 This world will be of joy, I believe. It will be when we know what it is to be free. When we know what it is to be free. This world will be of joy, I believe. It will be when we know what it is to be free.
I know each of you have in your hearts sorrows and pain as well as joys and celebrations. And I know too often we find ourselves isolated and not always able to share these events in our lives. But I know that in our hearts and minds we reach out to one another in consolation as well as celebration. Today we offer our deep prayers and empathy on the death of Ali Masalban's mother on March 9th in Tehran. Hajiye Masaldan was 93 years old and raised 8 children and was, according to all family, an amazing cook. May our prayers help ease all of the family and their grief. We continue to bring our deepest prayers for the stoppage of the suffering and the attacks in Ukraine. Our hearts are breaking. We are reaching out in ways that we can. I continue to encourage the Unitarian Universe Service Committee is a wonderful organization that can be trusted to work with the people on the ground to help with all of the people trying to escape out of this war-torn country. As our hearts are breaking with this suffering and this pain and the devastation, may we reach out to one another so we do not carry this alone. May we remember to cry together as well as laugh together when we find those moments when levity returns. Please join me in a few moments of silence and personal prayer. Be with us in our times of sorrow and pain. Spirit of justice, give us strength, embolden us to speak words that help ease the pain of others. Embolden us to take action, to push up against the status quo when it is in the way of justice. Help ease our loneliness as we continue in a time of pandemic. Help ease our times of isolation and frustration. Spirit of life and love, fill our hearts, ease our minds and our anxiety. Remind us we are a phone call, a text, a walk away from a friend, from family, from comfort. Spirit of community, be with us. Spirit of God and all the names and all the faces throughout the ages, remind us of our holiness and our preciousness. Blessed be, and amen.
How to Survive the Apocalypse by Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. First, learn to listen, not only for enemies around corners at hidden places, but for the faint footsteps of hope and the whisper of resistance. Hone your skills, aim your heart toward kindness, and stockpile second chances. Under the weight of destruction, we will need the strong shelter of forgiveness and deeper wells that give the sweet water of welcome we have a place for you. When the world ends, we must not add destruction to destruction, not accept a beggar's bargain in order to survive the apocalypse, any apocalypse at all. We have to give up counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency, the mistaken addiction to competition, the lie that the last to die has somehow survived.
Where is our holy church, where race and class unite, where equal persons in the search for beauty, truth, and right? Where is our holy one, a mighty host respond? The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond. Where is our paradise in aspiration's sight? Where rain we hope to see arise 10,000 years of right.
This is the second of a two-part sermon, split into 4 parts, just in case you're counting. And last Sunday, I talked about my first experience of ever flying business class on an international flight from Delhi to Amsterdam. And I talked about the barriers between classes there on a plane. I never saw those who were in the economy coach section. But what I didn't talk about was first class. I never saw first class either. It was a double-decker plane, and the first class, I presume, were in the deck above us. I don't know to this day how they got on the plane. I'm assuming there was some jump site for them to come in on their limos and just kind of grace their way into first class. And I don't know what they had that was better than what I had, which was pretty phenomenal from my perspective. But I did think about them up there, wondering, did they have fresh flowers, maybe? And then I thought, there's a whole other layer besides first class. There's those who are able to fly corporate. They don't need to fly commercial at all. Or maybe they are, have a charter plane at their call. And then there's another layer above that, those who own their own plane and have a pilot on call 24/7. I don't think I'll ever interact with that layer of first class flying. But there is a certain fascination, isn't there, with that kind of uber wealthy. In the 1990s, there was a TV show called The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, which was one of many shows that kind of show our indication of how much we're fascinated. There's the TV show Billions, Indecent Proposal, a movie, Great Gatsby, of course, and Downton Abbey. Oh my gosh. There's American Greed and some show called Millionaire Matchmaker. I kind of don't want to know what that's about. There's a new one called Gilded Age. And we also have this love-hate relationship with all of our fascination with the uber rich. But in all of our fascination, money is valued. More money is valued until it's not. Until it's not. There's a current Schadenfreude going on around the pleasure of failure and the humility of others with the Russian oligarchs, as we're all watching whether or not their super mega yachts are seized and whether or not their private planes are seized. And if I were them, though, I'd be more concerned about whether or not they're going to be secretly poisoned by Putin if they become a threat. We also kind of have a fascination with the poor and their efforts to climb out of poverty. Slumdog Millionaire, wonderful. Oliver Twist, Pursuit of Happiness, Parasite. They're all stories of success, but the success is actually rare and it's limited. Very often they have very limited climbing out of their poverty. Or worse, they decide that living with less is the value, kind of a romanticism of poverty in a Henry David Thoreau kind of way. But no matter what level of income we are at in our own circumstances, we're always looking up and down the income scale. We're comparing our circumstances with those above us in income and those below us. And if those who have a private jet, and we see them, we think, oh, I have somewhere to climb, and then my survival will be ensured. And those below us who may not have housing, we can say, oh, I'm not that bad. My survival is ensured. And that is what it's about. It's about ensuring our survival, to really confirm that in the scale of the apocalypse, that we have enough resources, whether it's a real apocalypse or not. And in case of apocalypse, we know that the uber wealthy, they have actually bought remote property. They have their private jets. They've bought bunkers filled with resources and food and generators, and they're going to survive. Well, great for them. This comparison is built into our hard wiring about how to compare. It is about basic level of survival. And it's about establishing a hierarchy to a point. At the same time as we're comparing ourselves in this hierarchical system of inequity, we also have a perception of a high emotional response to inequity. And it emerges very, very early. Preschool, we think. Preschool, when we start having a gut reaction to unfairness. It's not socially learned. We know that preschoolers, primates, employees, college students are all been tested, and we all have the same reaction, that when we perceive that others have less than some, no matter how much we actually have, we know something is off. Unfairness. And there are, they note, they are experts on this, some social benefits to this, that when we perceive that life is unequal, that it becomes a driving force for creativity. Innovations such as indoor plumbing, electricity, Wi-Fi, access to education, all are benefits to society when we have the perception of inequity. But we know there's a lot of problems as well when that inequity is too significant. It impacts our emotional and our physical health. If we are perceived as poor, studies indicate that we're more likely to have low self-esteem, low confidence, less likely to seek medical care until it hits a crisis point. We're more likely to make risky decisions and engage in risky behavior. We're also, this is interesting, more susceptible to conspiracy theories. I think we'll put that one over here on the table and just ponder that later for a different sermon. But it is all about perception of our status, which they say is a better indicator of health than education or actual income. It's about our perception of our status. Now, the wealthy are also subject to an emotional impact. Studies indicate that they actually tend to carry a high level of shame and embarrassment, again, because they know they're part of a system of inequity. They tend to minimize their actual wealth. They're also more likely to break traffic laws, more likely to cheat, more likely to steal from kids. They're more likely to shoplift. All of these studies, I know, who would have thought? And they're less generous by percent of income than middle and low income people. And they have less empathy. It's like they're shutting down their emotional systems because of the guilt and the shame. But all are indicating that the sense of general entitlement that they use to bolster their wealth, you see a corresponding drop in morality. Now, the wealthy, from the millionaires to the billionaires and the oligarchs, including Putin, what we know is they will never truly be happy or satisfied with their material wealth. They can look up the scale again and again, but they're always going to want more. And we know the line from the famous Rolling Stones, can't get no satisfaction. It's a brain chemistry problem. That as we chase happiness and satisfaction, we're never really truly satisfied. We want more, and it becomes addictive. It's that pleasure hormone of dopamine. Once we get the pleasure, the dopamine hits, we feel great, and then it wears off. And then we get used to it. So we need to get a greater high. It's why gambling becomes addictive. So if we know the greater wealth doesn't bring greater happiness, it doesn't bring greater health and wholeness, what we also know is that the perception, no matter the actual income, will not bring happiness for us. That what will happen is greater equity, will drop our resentment, will bring us more happiness and healthy. Creating more equity drops our resentment and a desire for more. And as I said last week, in order to reduce inequity, we have to break down the barriers. We have to climb between the classes. And we, more than important than anything else, have to ensure that humanity, human beings, are at the center of our value system.
Oh, young and
My colleague and Unitarian Universalist minister Greg Ward hosted for his congregation a hunger banquet. A hunger banquet. He created a hierarchy of abundance to scarcity at his hunger banquet. He created 3 sections of tables. He put one table up on the risers where the choir usually sings and set that table beautifully with linens and china and wine glasses and flowers. And they got all sorts of beautiful extras at their table, and the chairs were generally set up facing the front of the sanctuary. And down on the main part of the floor was another table that had good silverware and plates, but not the good stuff. It had plastic tablecloths, and they had basic necessities. And then down on the 3rd section of the tables, close to the kitchen, and the trash cans with paper plates and napkins and plastic, was the 3rd section. And the people were distributed by a random characteristic that he chose: eye color. Eye color. And each section had different eye colors: blue, hazel, and brown eyes. Totally random, which meant some families were split apart as well. And then the food came out, and that top table with the linens and the china got abundance, beautifully served food. And the middle table got pretty good food, not bad. They got, basically what you needed. And then the table by the kitchen and the trash cans, well, they didn't get food for quite a while. It took for a long time as all the other food was passing by them to the other tables. And there was some grumbling, and there was a reconnaissance mission by one parent who knew where the snacks were for the religious education and came back with some candy and crackers. And so that satisfied them for a little while. And then there was also 2 guards that were placed, fairly new members, but who were eager and naive. And they were just told the only thing they needed to do was keep order. Eventually, everybody had some food, but there was not enough at that 3rd underprivileged table. And it was cramped, and it was noisy and smelly by the trash cans. Now, when Greg set this up, he didn't know what to expect. He didn't know how his congregation would react to this. But he did think that they would quickly dissolve the order that he created. He thought that soon enough people would start sharing the food, right? That's probably what you all thought. Why don't they just share the food, right? Seems obvious. Well, in this false setup that he created, what he discovered is that the people up on the high table, up above the others, with their fine linens and food and their beautiful china, they were reticent to make any waves, to change anything. They saw the 2 pseudo guards, and they didn't want to push anything, so they just kind of maintained the status quo. They didn't know what to do. Confusion. And in the middle table, they recognized what was going on. They said inequity was real, but they really couldn't change it. They accepted the status quo, and they began to talk about other topics that were of greater importance to them at their table. And then that 3rd table, the scarcity table by the kitchen, they were hungry, and they were upset with the other tables not sharing. And they all blamed my colleague, Greg. Greg knew that they would feel disempowered, and he saw that they didn't have any clarity about what to do with this inequity, but he knew that they would get eventually indigestion from feeding on fear and injustice. So this scarcity table began to grow restless with their rumbling tummies, and there was echoes of a rebellion growing across the room, and they slowly started to spontaneously sing, "We shall overcome." And the middle table and the scarcity table, they dropped their forks and they began to take hands and put their arms together as the middle income people began to feel in alliance, to feel connected and in solidarity with them. And it took a little while, not that long, but a little while, finally for the privileged table to put down their forks and began to sing as well. But then they picked up their plates and their platters, and they walked across the room to the table around the corner by the kitchen and handed them the food. And the people at the poor table dropped their hands connecting to one another and welcomed the privileged. All is well. And they all united with one voice across 3 classes that the problems were caused by the minister. And they learned an important lesson. They learned such an important lesson, they said, that when one suffers, we all suffer. One suffers, we all suffer, and that they also want to blame somebody. They want to demonize, and it was so easy just to blame the minister for setting this up. It was a false setup, they said, and he said, really? Let's think about that some more in a ministerial kind of way. But the blame didn't get them anywhere. It didn't get them anywhere. They recognized the scarcity amidst the abundance, and the extreme inequity that we have in our country right now has a significant impact on individuals as well as our whole country, that in the end, no one is happy with the inequity. With 1% of the ownership of so much wealth, we can easily feel paralyzed and confused and disempowered, and we're overwhelmed, and it's so much easier to respond by maintaining the status quo instead of rocking the boat. Empty stomachs, though, can be loud with their grumbling. Greg offered many other hunger banquets to other congregations, and he said they always ended at some point with someone like a 6-year-old stuffing rolls into their pockets and tumbling over to the parents at a different table to feed their parents. And there's always some point when a 75-year-old would push their walker past the guards, elbowing them aside in order to bring dessert to the children. Inevitably, somebody finally broke the status quo. Right now, we're seeing a rebellion in our own country. There's no leader going on. There's no organization, but there is a huge rumbling of empty stomachs as people are quit their jobs during the pandemic, and they're just now slowly starting to come back. But they have different standards now for their pay scale. They were tired of not being able to eat enough or pay for their childcare. And their values had shifted as they realized they, as a human being, have not been valued. When one suffers, we all suffer. And somebody has to make the first steps to push past the status quo. Those attendees at Greg's hunger banquets didn't solve the complexities of inequity, but they recognized that in the end, goodness outweighs confusion and judgment and disempowerment. Goodness outweighs. And everyone who attended said that they never looked at wealth and poverty the same way again. They experienced something that was transformational in their perception and their own part and how they played in the systems of inequity, as they realized they were inextricably yoked to one another in mutual suffering. Now, we can easily continue to blame Jeff Bezos, as I did last Sunday. He's an easy target. But we still have to recognize and honor his inherent worth and dignity, that he has a beating heart, and we still need to call ourselves to push past the guards of the status quo and tear down barriers. And maybe at some point, Jeff Bezos will have a defibrillator tied to his capacity for empathy, and he will hear the stories of those who are suffering, and his heart will burst open. Maybe he will push past the barriers and the guards of the status quo. And if we continue to look up to the uber wealthy, or we look down the wealth scale and we can feel more insured of our own survival, we need to look at how many can't even afford a plane ticket, How much of the population can't imagine getting on a plane at all? We can hear a common cry for survival at worst, or just happiness at best. Sean Parker Dennison's reading reminded us that in order to survive the big apocalypse, any apocalypse at all, whether it's real or imagined, we have to give up the counterfeit currency of self-sufficiency, the mistaken addiction to competition, the lie that the last to die has somehow survived. So my charge to you, my beloved, my charge to you, how can you cultivate your satisfaction, your happiness, your contentment? How can you resist that urge to compare and compete and that yearning for more? Pay attention to your emotional and your spiritual and your physical health when it's given you signals that somehow you're feeling threatened or under emotional stress and you want more to satisfy. Yes, we're hardwired for this. We're hardwired. I get that. But that hardwiring is dependent upon perception, not actuality. It's the perception that somehow we're threatened. Perhaps we begin by listening with the ear of the heart to hear the cry of those suffering and let it transform ourselves. Let it transform our hearts as we recognize our utter dependence upon one another. Blessed be and amen.
Cuando el pobre nada tiene y aún reparte, cuando alguien pasa sed y agua nos da, cuando el débil a su hermano fortalece, va Dios mismo en nuestro mismo caminar. Cuando sufre y ha logrado su consuelo, cuando espera y no se cansa de esperar, cuando amamos aunque el odio nos rodee, va Dios mismo en nuestro mismo caminar.
If you have a chalice at home, or perhaps in your heart or mind, I invite you to get it out. And before we extinguish those flames, I remind you that next Sunday, on March 20th, we are expanding the number of people who can be with us in person. And I hope you go to our website and find out how you can register and upload your vaccine cards and get your masks ready. We would love to see you next Sunday here in our sanctuary, and with lots of air hugs and hospitality. I invite you to speak the words that are in our order of service. As we extinguish our chalice, these are words that are said by Unitarian Universalists all across the country on Sunday mornings. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go forth, my good people, go forth into this world, ready to shake things up a little bit. Let that be the ripple effect. Let it be the ripple effect as we all seek to change the status quo. Know that you are people of abundance of love. That's where it begins. Return again with your blessings.